Wyvells of Mount Joy Township, Adams County, say they wanted to make a statement with their Christmas decorations this year.
As part of our Christmas decoration, we would display the name Jesus to point out to everyone that we in this family believe that the reason for the season is to celebrate the birth of Jesus.
But where the Wyvells live, their homeowners association has a say in what can go up or come down. The HOA telling them at first a neighbor found their Jesus sign offensive and then said signage like this was not allowed. But the Wyvells contend that it's not a sign, rather a Christmas decoration.
We have ordinances with regard to Christmas decorations, and my Christmas decorations comply with the HOA ordinances on Christmas decorations.
The Courtyard's HOA board issued a statement to Fox 43, in part saying, quote, "It is indeed unfortunate that our attention has been unnecessarily redirected in this manner with a suggestion that Scrooge is alive and well in our community. Many of our families will be in church on Monday with their spirit diminished by this attack," end quote. But the family says many other people have supported their display.
When this happened, we were really shocked. We have gotten tremendous support from our neighbors here at the links, and that just makes us feel so good.
The Wyvells plan on keeping the display up until January 15th, when the rules say all displays must come down. They still do not know who was reportedly offended by the display.
People get offended by different things, but just because something offends you doesn't mean the whole world has to change to accommodate you.
Another round in what has become a very public war of words between the United States and North Korea. Pyongyang today slamming the most recent set of UN sanctions against the regime, calling them an act of war that destroys the peace and stability of the Korean peninsula and the wider region. On Friday, the UN Security Council unanimously passed a new set of sanctions drafted by the United States. That move is aimed at restricting oil supplies that are critical to the regime.
We start in the US, where Defense Secretary James Mattis says the best way for America to avoid war is for its troops are quote, ready to go. Speaking to soldiers on Friday, he said US diplomats rely on the military's preparedness, which allows them to speak with authority in negotiations.
Storm clouds are gathering over the Korean peninsula, US Defense Secretary Jim Mattis said on Friday. Mattis was speaking to soldiers and airmen at the 82nd Airborne Division's Hall of Heroes in North Carolina as part of his holiday tour of bases to greet troops. He didn't go so far as to predict armed conflict, but he said America will have the best chance of preventing one if its words are backed up by a strong military. A military that is ready to take action, he said, will give weight to the words of diplomats as they try to put an end to North Korea's nuclear and missile programs. Mattis's remarks came as the United Nations adopted tough new sanctions on North Korea, seeking to ban around 90% of the regime's imports of refined petroleum products. While the defense secretary has highlighted the importance of military preparedness, telling the troops to read the book, A Study in Unpreparedness, published in a decade after the Korean War ended in 1953, to get an idea of what went wrong the last time around.
Missile strikes hit a small town in eastern Ukraine, damaging homes, a school and medical clinic. Ukraine blamed the attack 2 nights ago on pro-Russian separatists, civilians caught in the middle of the 3-year-long conflict. The US has strongly opposed what it calls Russian aggression in eastern Ukraine, blaming Russia for violence that has claimed more than 10,000 lives and displaced 1.7 million people. Now it will provide weapons to help Ukraine defend itself. The State Department announcing the United States has decided to provide Ukraine enhanced defensive capabilities as part of our effort to help Ukraine build its long-term defence capacity to defend its sovereignty and territorial integrity and to deter further aggression. Reports suggest the support package, if approved by Congress, would include anti-tank missiles. US Secretary of State Rex Tillerson has said Russia's occupation of Crimea, which the US wants returned to Ukraine, is a major stumbling block in relations between Moscow and Washington.
The issue that stands in the way is Ukraine. We can have differences in other arenas, in Syria. We can have differences in other areas, but when one country invades another, that is a difference that is hard to look past. Or to reconcile. And we've made this clear to Russia from the very beginning that we must address Ukraine. It stands as the single most difficult obstacle to us renormalizing a relationship with Russia, which we badly would like to do.
Moscow says Washington is encouraging new bloodshed in eastern Ukraine with the decision to provide Kiev with enhanced defensive capabilities. In a statement, Russia's Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov accused the US of crossing the line and fomenting conflict in eastern Ukraine, a region known locally as Donbass.
Venezuela has expelled the Brazilian ambassador and the top Canadian diplomat. Venezuelan leaders called the impeachment of former Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff a right-wing coup and say diplomatic relations with Brazil won't be restored till the government reinstates the constitutional order. The head of Venezuela's Constituent Assembly also accused Canada of interfering in Venezuela's internal affairs after Canada imposed sanctions on senior Venezuelan officials.
An Italian C-130 military plane landed at an airport south of the capital on Friday, carrying 110 women and children, and a second flight arrived later the same day to bring more than 50 people. The migrants were covered in blankets or bundled in coats as they disembarked from the plane on a chilly evening.
Our plan for next year is to resettle to third country or to evacuate from Libya between 5,000 and 10,000 refugees. Now, it depends the countries which will be generous enough, like Italy now, to offer places where we can send the refugees.
Italy's move to open up a safe corridor for some of the migrants follows criticism by rights groups who have condemned the country's efforts to block migrants in Libya in exchange for aid, training and equipment to fight smuggling.
I think that this should be a point of pride for all Italians that we managed to intervene in a particularly difficult situation like the Libyan one, and having managed to bring to safety women, mothers and children, having been able to welcome refugees after having rescued them from the smugglers of human beings.
Ahmed Hussein, thanks for joining me on Upfront. At a time when the world is facing massive refugee and migrant crises, which have prompted a lot of Western governments to effectively close their borders and crack down on quote-unquote illegal immigrants, Canada, at least in terms of rhetoric, has taken a very different stance, a more positive stance, welcoming refugees, praising immigrants. Why?
Well, first of all, we're also against irregular migration. But having said that, as a country and as a society, we have historically embraced immigration, regular and orderly immigration, and a well-managed immigration system that has delivered so much positive outcomes for Canada and for Canadian communities. This goes from powering our economic growth, but also adding to our skill sets, our cultural and social fabric.
Flash floods and mudslides brought on by Tropical Storm Tembin. The towns of Tubod and Piagapo on Mindanao Island, the Philippines' second largest, have been devastated. Dozens of homes are destroyed, and rescue workers fear the number of casualties will rise.
We're really on our toes right now, and we're trying to figure out how we can give help to so many people that are really in danger right now.
At the height of the storm, winds of up to 80 kilometers an hour uprooted trees and triggered torrents of mud and rock from a nearby mountain. Volunteers are digging with whatever they can to try and recover bodies. Power cuts and the loss of communication lines have hampered rescue efforts.
The terrain is kind of rough. There are a lot of rocks, and the area is pretty wide. It's not just in one province, but in several provinces. So we're having a hard time trying to communicate to other areas that may have been affected.
Last week, 46 people were killed in the central Philippines in a similar storm. The Philippines is hit by around 24 major cyclones each year on average, many of them deadly. But Mindanao Island, home to 20 million people, is rarely hit. The region is still recovering from Typhoon Haiyan, which killed more than 7,000 people and affected millions in 2013. And while the worst of Storm Tembin has passed, it will take a long time before this area recovers.
More than 3 months after Hurricane Maria tore through Puerto Rico, the island is still struggling to recover. CBS News video journalist Nicole Skenga recently visited the area for a look at where things stand.
Everything is broken. Everything is changed. Everything. This is no Christmas. It's no feel like a Christmas.
We love the land, you know. We love here. And I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave this land. Now, to get used to this is real hard. I just tell God to help me. I tell God, help me to support this so I can make it out.
It's been 3 months since Hurricane Maria first made landfall in Puerto Rico. Deep in the mountains, holiday spirit hides behind the devastation.
It's real difficult to tell you how it was when this was real nice. It was a ranch right here, and it was another one right here. That's my house here. This is my little Christmas tree. I cannot have a big Christmas tree because we don't have no electricity.
But for Lima, Christmas is the last thing on his mind. The 66-year-old grandfather has survived without normal power since Hurricane Irma first hit the island in early September.
This is every day for 4 months. I'm doing this. And I got the generator right here.
When do you use it?
I use it 3 hours during the day because the gas is too expensive. And I use it 4 hours during the night. Ice.
Also without power, police officer and store owner Thomas Soto, who runs a pork restaurant up front and an ice business out back. Soto serves pork and rice to about 100 customers per day without running water. Luckily, most of them prefer beer.
The people come to eat and have a good time.
For Soto, part of having a good time means not taking himself too seriously this holiday season and decorating the Christmas tree accordingly. Even the nativity manger has a blue tarp from FEMA.
The two trees representing like Puerto Rico after the hurricane and Puerto Rico before the hurricane. We're gonna put MRA with the military count, and we'll put a bag in the street the people right here come crying. We don't have nothing to eat. And then she see the street and the humor come, and then he's laughing, eating, you know. And
the Thomas Fire is now the largest recorded blaze in California's history. The Southern California fire started burning December 4th, and as of Friday evening was only 65% contained. It's burned 273,400 acres and damaged more than 1,000 structures. One person has died. The record size is on par with this year's fire season in general. State officials have called it the most destructive season the state has seen. Harsh winds and dry conditions helped stoke fires that have wrought havoc on the state this year. And although the Thomas Fire was the largest, it wasn't the most destructive. The Tubbs Fire in Sonoma County damaged more than 5,000 structures and caused 22 deaths. The last record holder for California's largest fire was 2003's Cedar Fire in San Diego County.
For the first time ever, South Korea is preparing to carry out clinical tests in 2018 that will transplant pig organs into humans. The organs come from a specially engineered mini pig that is about a third of the size of a regular pig, making it appropriate for transplant purposes due to its smaller size and function for humans.
Korean researchers announced they are looking into transplanting pig organs in patients with diabetes in 2018. Seoul National University's Xenotransplantation Research Center was recently successful in transplanting pig pancreatic islets, which is a section of the pancreas that contains its endocrine cells, into a diabetic monkey. The results of the experiment showed that the monkey maintained normal blood glucose levels after receiving the pig's tissue. The next step now is to perform the procedure on humans, according to the center.
As soon as we get approval from our institutional review board, we plan to carry out a clinical trial on 2 people at the end of 2018 and early 2019, respectively.
If the test succeeds, it will mark the first animal-to-human transplantation case in the world. The first clinical test will use a pig organ in its natural state, but the next clinical test will utilize genetically modified organs to minimize rejection.
The idea of transplanting tissues from a pig to a human is already a huge challenge, but even more so if the animal is genetically modified. So we decided to start the clinical trial with a naturally grown pig.
The ancient city of Pompeii in Italy has opened 3 newly restored Roman houses. The country's Minister for Culture inaugurated the buildings, which are now open to visitors. The flowered Lararium house retains much of its original wall paintings, as well as an area intended for worship, which is decorated with flying cupids and scattered flowers. A large room overlooking the garden has mythological squares in the center of yellow panels. Pompeii was devastated by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD, but the ash and rock preserved much of the city, providing a snapshot of life nearly 2,000 years ago.
These twin boys are shaking things up. 15-month-olds Noah and Micah can't stop giggling and jiggling on their mom's vibrating exercise platform. Looks like fun. And wrapping a Christmas gift is never easy, especially if you're a little kid. It just won't stay open. Maybe if he tries it one more time. Wow, wrapping presents is hard. Don't worry, we've all been there.